You could start the recording. I don't know if I'm ready. Okay. So it sucks because I have to have my glasses on to read, but then I
You're
don't want them
fine.
on, then I can't see you. Will you what? What'd you say?
I'm not moving. You're gonna be fine.
Okay. Yeah, you gotta make
I gotta feel
love,
comfortable.
make love to the microphone.
I am on the microphone. All right, it's green. Oh, crank it up.
Mm.
Oh. Ha 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 ha.
No, it didn't turn red. Can it hear me here? No,
No.
I have to be really close. Okay. So ready, buddy?
Yes.
Shazam! Jay Jacobs here, host of the custom manufacturing podcast, The Job Shop Show. Today we are live with my good friend and the manufacturing genius of Rapid, Steve Lynch. Steve and I worked together at Rapid, where he started as a sheet metal programmer in, was it 2003, Steve?
Yep.
We were around 10 people then, and we ended up as the we were around 10 people then, and he ended up as the director of technology with 6 software developers under him. Steve was critical to figuring out and implementing the technology that enabled us to grow on average over 32% between 2010 and 2017. And technology was absolutely a secret weapon of Rapid, as well as some other stuff we're going to get into that Steve helped bring to the company that wasn't specifically technology. I learned so much from him. He always kept me on my toes. We had a very open relationship, and I gave Steve permission to challenge me, to question me, which was sometimes hard for others at the company to comprehend and understand. Welcome to the Job Shop Show, Steve.
Thanks a lot. This is awesome. What a moment.
So at Rapid, you operated under a simple philosophy, the theory of constraints. Find the constraint and fix it. And I often equated this to the chain with the weak link, and that if we were growing, we were always going to break a link, because that's what happens as you just continually stretch and grow. So the theory of constraints, how you gained that philosophy, came from book The Goal. Can you just talk to us about the goal, theory of constraints, and how all that came about and how you implemented it and what you did day to day?
Yeah, The Goal is like a really exciting book. It's been around for a long time, and there's a series that Eli Goldratt wrote, and the one after The Goal is It's Not Luck, and that title really has always hit to me, that there must be a method or a procedure to being successful. And when you read this book, he outlines all these details and techniques about it, but the simple thing or the concept of it is quite simple, but actually implementing it and staying true to what it says is difficult. So you want to focus on the weakest link, which is obviously hard to measure. So you have to put as many metrics in
Well,
place
if you're
as you
growing
can.
fast, sometimes it's pretty obvious because
Yeah.
something breaks in the shop.
We also had tons of metrics though too, and most shops don't
That's
have the reports and
that's a
insight
great-
that we had.
Yeah. So we'll come back to metrics, but keep chugging there.
So even at the early stages, I would put this into place at my personal position. I always wasn't a manager. Sometimes I was just a programmer, and I would look at what is the longest part or what is the hardest part of my task during my activities that I can improve on. And if I just focused on that task, you would actually become really in love with that problem, and you'd love that problem. And it's hard to stop fixing that problem when it's not the problem anymore. And that's the trickiest part about the theory of constraints, is that once it's not the weakest link anymore, move on and stop. And I don't think that's a lot of people grasp or understand.
So how did you identify weak links beyond the fact that something just wasn't working? Can you give us an example?
It's hard to give an example, and most of the time it was a gut reaction, but as our systems became more sophisticated, it was very easy working with Tom Persh, who was a metric master, and yourself as well. Jay would always come to the table and go, I think it's this, and then Tom would prove it out through data. And it was amazing because Jay was like 3 weeks ahead of everyone, but we always did, have the data behind what we thought was needed, and we fit the solution to the problem rather than just saying we have this great solution. Where else can we apply it?
Talk a little bit about the metrics, because that, as you said, wasn't something we always had, but we definitely made more progress once we started to define what was important and measure it. Can you remember any of the specific things that we measured?
You were the one of the ones that I'm taking to my new company, which I just started, was new customers. Like you wanted to see new customers per month and how many there were. And that was like the golden key, I believe, for really measuring your sales guy. If your sales guy's out there doing, 40 hours a week, is that 40 hours a week really on new customers, or is it on just catering to old customers? And I think your metric really pointed that weakness out.
If I remember correctly, we needed to have at least 20% of the customers in the previous month be new customers, or I knew I was going to see a slowdown in sales growth in 2 to 3 months.
But our business profile is so different than these manufacturing shops because we were a job shop. Our shop needed thousands of jobs to run every week, whereas most shops need like 20. So our metric would probably more overblown to the prototyping industry. But yes, like an exometry or someone out there, they need to have a massive sales force. And at the end, we had more salespeople than we did making parts. It seemed like it was crazy. There was a whole room of salespeople and computers and William with the IT. I mean, it was nuts.
So getting back to the book, The Goal, can you describe it so somebody listening can get excited and want to read it?
So the book, The Goal, is not a business book. It's not a boring book. It's written as like a story, and it's a great story. And throughout the book, they give multiple examples, but the easiest example is they're on a hike and they have some overweight kid. I don't know what the political version of that is these days, but the slow guy, they're not all going to get up the mountain until the slow guy gets up the mountain. So they took his backpack off and they catered, make sure there's nothing in front of this guy to slow him down. And really anything that would stop him walking is what they clear out in front of them. And this would be like a forming department in your sheet metal shop. You always want to make sure that the forming department is never going to run out of parts to form. And you want to make sure that the forming department is not doing hardware or something stupid, like keep him forming. And that's what our main constraint at sheet metal was for a long time, was our forming department. And we fixed that through smart press brakes and advanced tooling and software. I mean,
right. I think one of the other points about the book, if I remember correctly, is it is a story. It is technically fiction, and it also related it to the personal aspect of one's life. And the main character in the book, I believe, had problems with his marriage, and he discovered the constraints in his marriage, or at least the constraints that were caused by him, and he fixed them.
In all of these books, I really talk about this evaporating clouds mentality, which I think I've done naturally, but by being more aware of it, I can communicate in such a way that it really helps the person on the other side of the argument realize that there are common solutions to these things rather than I just want it my way to get to the end result. And the evaporating clouds is really something powerful. But when you look at it, it's so common
evaporating
sense.
Clouds?
Yep. And when you read about it or understand it, it's like that is so simple. But
what is it?
It's like two people want to get to the same end result, but they have different ways to get there. And then you can show or communicate that there's other ways to get to that end result. Like you find common ground. Like we both want to grow the company. You want to do it through sales. I want to do it through technology. But as long as we grow the company and the end result, we can find common ground to get there.
It reminds me of the pricing theory that you and I won't say necessarily disagreed upon, but we came at from different ways. And I always wanted to use the engineering approach and say, okay, we want to be really precise and understand the costs here, here, and here, and just build it all up granularly from the ground up, dial it in as specific as possible. And you had a different approach. You remember that?
I think I do, but remind me. Just in case I get it wrong.
regarding it's better to be close than perfect.
Oh, yes. But we were also in a prototype world where, missing 35 cents on a piece of material isn't going to kill you as long as you get the quotes out in a very fast manner. It was about reaction time.
Right. So much of the success of Rapid was the automation of what I called the rote. And at the end, you did have 6 software developers who worked underneath you. But in the beginning, you were a programmer. So how did you make that journey? How did you learn to program? What was the reason you decided to learn to program? Can you share some of that with the audience?
Well, way back when, I was the only programmer at Rapid for a very long time, and I had to train everyone in there. But like we were working crazy hours. Like at 11 o'clock, we were calling for pizza. So I'm working 70 hours a week. My hand actually gave out on me, and I literally couldn't use my hand to click the mouse anymore. Which you wouldn't think like clicking a mouse is a lot of issue, but it like burned. It was on fire. So then I used my left hand for a while, and that was okay. And then that started going at me. So then you actually bought me a foot pedal.
I remember the foot pedal.
Jay
Yeah.
was like, "You want a friggin' foot pedal? This is stupid." But I was like, "I gotta get the workout," So I used that, and then we actually hired someone called Brad Christie, who was amazing. He showed me a whole nother world of, computer science and macros, and just sucked a lot of knowledge off of him. And then Mike Moore came on board, and that was like amazing. This guy would just do magic.
So let's talk though. The first step in you programming, if we want to call it programming, was the creation of macros, wasn't it?
Yep, just very simple routines in a computer.
So, and the goal of the macros was to have a program execute a bunch of consistent mouse clicks so that you did not have to use your hand, which was on fire, to click. So that's what you were trying to solve.
I knew all the buttons to press. I just couldn't press them, and I at the time computers weren't as good as they were either, so I could actually move the mouse before the computer was ready and wait for the wait sign, then hit the button. Like it was nuts.
And how did that transition to actually computer programming for you?
Once you get the concept of what a variable is and how to store it and how you can pull it back and read variables, it's not, yes, it becomes more complicated and there's databases, but there's simple parts of all of this that work the same.
Yeah.
So if you grab the concept, you can really do a lot. But these days, even with Visual Studio, half of it's auto type for you. Like it's not hard to be a computer programmer like it used to be.
So you say Visual Studio, what's that?
Visual Studio is like a platform that makes it simpler for you to create programs in C#.
And what is C#?
C# is a Microsoft computer language they came up with that goes on top of C, which is...
So what are the types of things that you could program with this language?
The most magical moment is just seeing a stupid message box comes up. You can type message box, open, close parentheses, put something in there, and the word shows up that you do in the message box. It's still like I'm still a code today, and I love it. Like it's just fascinating to me that you can see behind why these computers work, and it's really interesting.
And many of the owners who are going to be listening don't have the desire, or just, I used to always ask, do you like computers? And some people just don't like computers. They use them because they have to, but it's not a friendly relationship. So if for someone who's not friendly with a computer, how do they find the person in their company and then give them the opportunity to learn and take that first step? What would you do?
What did you do?
Well, I never learned to program. I didn't have to. I had you guys.
Did this. I think it's just inspiration and being a good leader, and
So are there websites though? How did you...
Oh my God, you can Google.
Did you buy a book?
Days.
Did you buy a book? Did you watch YouTube videos? Did you...
I did not do any of those things, but you can just Google what you want and it comes up like Stack Overflow, and it's so easy these days.
So how would you identify the person in your company who might have the aptitude to program, who perhaps hasn't programmed before?
Don't know, because one of the skills that I do have is finding someone's unique ability to do these things. And as a manager, you always find someone that wants to do that. And then if you find someone that wants to do that, you can either train him the normal job or, give him the tools to make sure he's successful.
Okay.
Blocking out the time for him so, he has time to work on it each week.
You also learned a lot outside of work hours.
Yes, I am a workaholic, I think.
But
this stuff didn't happen overnight.
Right. So you would go home and instead of working on your motorcycle or playing a video game, you learned how to program.
Yep, I could sit there and watch TV, or I could do this, and I've always just wanted to create stuff.
So before Rapid created eRapid, which is a plugin for SolidWorks, we tried to create a program that would be available to new part developers to automatically quote their sheet metal parts and allow them to order it. And we attempted to do that, I think, 3 different times, probably spent over $1 million.
Not my project.
Well, and then you sort of took the bull by the horns and made it happen in a way, because we weren't originally going to have it work within SolidWorks. So you had the experience of working with outside software developers who created custom programs, and you also, some were successful, some were not. You managed some, you saw some that I was trying to manage unsuccessfully. What are your thoughts on outside programmers, programming companies? How do they fit in? Where would you use one? Where do you have to be cautious?
So the root cause for all of this stuff is really communication. And I personally couldn't communicate the right way. Tom Persh came in and I was just upset and angry and, why aren't these guys listening to me? I know where all the problems are. And he gave me this book where I didn't even realize what I was reading for a while, because he gave it to me, asked me to read it, went on some trip. And it's all about just reporting the facts and taking your emotion out of it. And I got to the end of the book, I was like, this is crap. Why do you have me read this? But that book actually changed almost everything on how I communicate what I want. And it helped me understand that the reason why you can't use outside software developers is because they don't understand what you're trying to accomplish, even though to you, it's very easy. You just want this part to flow over there and I want my bend gains on it. But then to explain to someone what a bend gain is and have to start over from the beginning is very frustrating. You're teaching, you have to tell someone in a way where you expect them to know it because they're a smart programmer, but they don't know the actual mechanics of the shop. So trying to use outside programming is not successful. And that's why I think the first 2 projects weren't successful.
Do you recall the name of the book that Tom had you read?
I don't.
Right.
I didn't like the book. I never liked the book, but the concepts of it was really good. And it wasn't until halfway through the book, I was like, why the hell is he having me read this? Oh, I'm probably just not communicating what I want to him.
Well, we'll try and find that, and we will make sure that we can get that on the show notes for folks.
But as far as my career, that was the biggest thing that broke through with my career, was being able to take my emotion out of it and communicate exactly what I wanted to implement or put in place, rather than just do this because. And it's a small change, but a big change.
Yeah. So beyond technology and learning how to program, you also would jump into different parts of the company that needed fixing and help figure out a path forward. And specifically, we started in 2009 Rapid Machining. And you didn't really know anything about machining, but you helped us make that successful. So how did you go about learning about machining?
A quick diversion first. Every time I hear rapid machining, I think of Rudy in the conference room going, I don't think there's that many people that want prototype parts. I just don't see how this is going to work, Jay. This is nuts. We need long run parts. Like, I always think of that too. It's so funny.
So Rudy is Rudy Stahl, who was the owner of RS Machining, which was a small machine shop which we bought. And Rudy was going to go into retirement, and I convinced him to stay on board and get rapid machining started. I remember he told me later he figured, okay, well, I'll just work for another year or two, take this guy's money and make it happen. And then I'll ride off into the sunset. And I think we gave him quite a ride off that he didn't anticipate. I remember he had jobs on the whiteboard, and we told him about our ERP system where he could manage his jobs. And no, the whiteboard's always worked in the past, and it'll work just fine. And a couple of weeks later, he's tell me about this ERP system. So the reason I bring this up is there's many shops that it goes along to Steve's theory of constraints, where a lot of time is taken doing something just because that was the way it's always been done, and someone either doesn't know about a technology that can simplify it or doesn't have the skill set to implement the technology. And this is way back again in 2009, but one of the simple things that I did, and it's not really technology, but Rudy would calculate by hand the prices. So if you wanted a different quantity, he had to go on paper with a pencil or pen and figure out the price. And I created a spreadsheet for him and allowed him to put in any quantity he wanted and obviously get an instant price. And his eyes just lit up. He was so happy, and he had no idea that it was that simple to create a pricing spreadsheet. So I would encourage someone to look at what takes you a lot of time right now in your company, and is it something that could be automated? Because that's really how we got started along that. But getting back to the machining, how did you learn about machining, and what were the constraints in machining, and how to take it from a traditional machine shop into the rapid way of doing things?
So the machining adventure was really fun for me. I went over there. I was asked to go over there because it wasn't doing very well. I didn't know that much about machining at all. So I just did what I normally do, which is sit in the cubicles next to the estimators, listen, ask questions, did my sample data. I found through the sample data that we were on the back end buying $1,200 tools for $600 parts. It's like, this has to stop. How come this is happening? Brought that communication. It was all about communication back to the estimators. The estimators didn't even know about it. We brought awareness to it. We started good, bad, ugly. Mm-hmm. That was a great one by week. And we just kind of took case by case scenario down. And then once we had it kind of working, we then sped it up. And that's literally what I've done every position I had to go to.
And I think it's important that you had a willing partner in Rudy, and that even though he had not been exposed to this and he'd operated under probably close to 40 years of how he machined parts, he was open to trying new things. And with his machining background and expertise, which was tremendous, the combination of the mentality, the mindset of quick turnaround, what you were able to bring to the table, and then how he knew it had to be integrated into the shop, how it had to be presented to the team, was so powerful.
It was awesome. That was a fun time.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about managing people, because you had a unique style. You have a unique style. And I guess probably, let me ask you, how would you describe your style of managing people?
So I'm doing it right now. I have a brand new shop they opened up, Approved Sheet Metal. It's so much fun, and I keep it fun. I'm a very positive person. I think it's less energy to be positive than it is negative. So we come in every day. We do our stand up. I talk to them
What
about
is a stand-up?
a stand up is about 10, 15 minutes where everyone's standing up and you talk about the company. It's very easy for us because we have so many things going on. Give them a status of the front office, what's changed, what's up. And it's great. And it's back to communication again. Like if you have good communication, everything else seems very simple and you're not surprising people. You can implement change because they know things are coming. And just really being open and listening. And
Do you have standard things you talk about every day, metrics that you give them an update on?
not yet, but we're developing that. And I think that's the difference too, is I don't develop those. I kind of ask around. I let these guys participate in. You put guardrails on there, so it's not something stupid they don't want to hear about.
Right.
But the more people participating on something, they feel like they own it and they care more. And if you can bring that careness or that work, this is a team, you're part of this, into that atmosphere, it's always been very successful for me.
So you are speaking, even though it's your company and your team, you are speaking in front of a number of people. And I'm just curious how that feels now, because I remember way back you did not like to speak in front of people.
Yes, but you've sent me to so many presentations and SolidWorks meetings, and so something that if you practice, you get good at it.
So for an owner who is also uncomfortable,
and you have a job shop show.
Yeah. The way I learned to speak in front of people was starting way back in the early days of Rapid. I just thought it was important to communicate. So we had, say, 10 people at the beginning, and it's a lot easier to talk to 10 people than 25 people versus 50 people. But I, every month, got in front of the company and gave them an update. We didn't have the daily stand-ups at that point. We didn't know about those. But by doing that once a month and having my audience grow, I got very accustomed to talking in front of people. And when we added rapid machining, we had 2 company meetings a month. And then we added another machining division and a production sheet metal division. So at one point I was doing 4 company meetings a month. And then the whole idea is to build a team so that you can focus as an owner on the things that you are really good at that no one else can do. So we pushed to the people who ran each of the divisions the company update. And I remember David Pulio, who ran the prototype sheet metal division, was so nervous the first time that he did it. And by this time it was probably 75 people. But 2 years later, 3 years later, he was so comfortable the first time he had a piece of paper and that he read almost everything off of it. And then 2-3 years later, almost all ad-libbed, a couple notes here and there. And that's how you develop the ability to communicate. So a little bit of aside, getting away from the management of people.
So
but
back to the management part of it, I do think it's unique. I hired a tire changer, a guy from the liquor store, and a cook. And these guys grew up to be team leaders at Rapid now. Like just giving people opportunities, finding the guy that, he can control coming in early. He can control staying late. He can control working on the weekends if he wants. Hard work ethic. And the best accomplishment was everyone telling me you can't just train anyone anything. And I didn't train him. This individual did a lot by himself, but Hyro came from really, we had a video game ad at Craigslist, which is amazing. If you like video games, come see us. And he showed up. We taught him how to program. He grew himself into the tooling department. Remember, we had our own tooling department.
Yeah.
And he always wanted to be a computer programmer. It took about 2 years for him to make the leap because he was scared. and he jumped into coding, and he learned now he can do databases and SQL commands and, stored procedures. I mean, the guy's a killer. And this, he did not go to school for this or anything. So you really can train not anyone, but the people that want to learn almost any skill set through repetition and
desire
time.
is huge. And let's jump back though. Specifically, we had a strategy. We were growing rapidly.
Every time we needed an engineer, I'd look at the shipping department and go, who's down there?
So we came up though with a strategy. We would put an ad in Craigslist and other places, but Craigslist seemed to work. And like to play video games, come apply for a job at Rapid Sheet Metal. And why that? Well, operating the CAD system was a lot like playing a video game.
And a lot of people don't want to sit down all day. Like that's a whole skill set in itself, and stay still and focused.
Gamers are
they're lazy.
You had to. No, they look at the world a different way.
But they don't like exercise. I'm a sitter. I know this. I like to sit. Danielle, my wife, she works out 3 times a day. I'll sit there and watch her. I
still remember though some of the blurry-eyed folks coming in the morning after a new game came out because they were standing in line till midnight to get it, and then they went home and played it until 3 or 4 a.m. Got a couple hours sleep and came in. But those are the sacrifices you made. But what we would do is we would hire 2 or 3 estimators or people who we wanted to become estimators at a time. And what would we pay them? It was pretty small. $12 an hour, say. And we assumed that maybe 1 out of the 2, 1 out of the 3 would make it. Sometimes none of them would, sometimes all of them. But it was a way to bring people in, give them a shot.
There's a process behind this too that we have.
Talk about that.
So the process is all the training materials I put in place. The people that I did train, if they couldn't train someone else, then they didn't know it. So, I mean, this is all handed down layers on layers that made it successful.
You also kept the team very motivated, and you talk about some of the techniques that you use, because some of them were pretty conscious, maybe others were not so conscious.
So I like air horns, I like loud noises, I'm high energy, and I just come in every morning with a great attitude, compliments, and it's really that simple. I enjoy what I did every day, and I think they felt that.
Right. So you would, and I saw this, you would come in, you'd say hi to everybody, you'd high five people. You definitely brought a lot of energy into the room. And that was deliberate, wasn't it?
You have to, yeah.
You also...
And the days I didn't, you could see the mood change. Because, you can't be happy every day, or things did go wrong. We had our tough times.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Talk about how you gamified it too.
So, yes, I worked on the floor. I actually took the journey I just completed from deburring the shop owner, which I love. So I've seen all stages of this. And if I was in the deburring department, I could go down there, I could kick butt one day, get out 5 million parts. The next day I could get out 2, and there's really no difference because, it's all about how long I'm trapped in the shop, and that's my paycheck. So I couldn't ever change the pay for the people that I worked for, but what I could do is make them aware that we were cognizant of how much work they put out when they hit new records, or if they did a 5-part assembly the first time, or if they programmed a 20-part assembly first time. So we always put in levels. You're level 1, level 2, or level 3. Jay would sign the contract or the award. It would be a plaque, and each level got higher. But when these guys there was no monetary value to that. It was literally just, here's your skill set, here's your acknowledgement. We appreciate you working hard for this. And it was a celebration moment.
And I think it's important, though, that we had formal criteria for each level.
Yes.
And that we gave them something physical that they could display. That certificate, it was displayed in everyone's cube. When you walked by, you knew they were a level 2 now. And that is so important to making someone feel good about what they are doing, that they've accomplished something and it's
That-
being recognized.
Yeah, the company is actually looking at what they do and they're contributing. People want to contribute to something, and you know, you can have a superstar with that gets no attention. He's not going to be there very long.
Right. So you also like to, particularly with your software dev team, have events to
Well, I got a little
team
out,
building.
I got a little out of control when I could put sound effects on things, and it sounded like a casino one time when you walked in there because there's all sorts of bells and whistles and things going off for certain events. So that we had to tune back down, but I still like a good moderate mix of those things. Or if you kick off a new order, you had us do the gong.
Mhm.
You know, these things during the day, they're just fun activities.
Yeah, I remember we had if we got an order over a certain sales level, it was a physical gong, and I'd go out and I'd bang the hell out of that thing, and you guys moved it out of the estimating out into the shop because I was driving you nuts. But the other thing too is you did off-site stuff too for team building.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, we went golfing, which I learned through the development team, and a bunch of developers out there golfing is pretty funny to watch. I'll tell you that. We weren't very good, but we had a blast doing it. You know, we did a bunch of local events, and I let these guys kind of pick as well too. And then you set a goal to it, whether it's a new release or, you know, a certain report or things like that. So we are always working towards something. You want to set some goal that you're working towards.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, ideas without goals is really just dreams, and that's something else you taught me. And I think the one thing you've always taught me, there's people that can dream it, people that can make it, people that can repeat. I do think I'm in between the dream and make it, and I just love getting things done a lot, but I like coming up with new ideas too, so it's tough.
So what Steve's referring to is actually from Strategic Coach and Dan Sullivan. And some people who make it up, some people who make it real, and some people who make it recur. And you can do all three, and you probably do all three, but there's one that is probably the focus of what your efforts are. I also think that going back to these events, and obviously they cost a little bit of money, but they don't cost a lot of money. And the morale, the team would do whatever it took at the right times. And part of that was the building of the team in the times when it wasn't tough. You don't have to be working 110% all the time. So that was really your initiative, Steve.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a golfer. I was never going to say that's golfing.
So I did listen to Tom's interview in preparation, and he has some rules, and most of these rules I got from Tom, but vision and wants without goals are just dreams, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
Always volunteer. Like, honestly, like this is how I learned how to program and how I've always kind of jumped up the next tier, climbed the ladder. I never had all these skill sets. But
so talk about that one, because not just yourself, I saw that with other people at Rapid, and we gave them the opportunity. So say that again. It volunteer. Talk about that.
Yeah, you always volunteer. And you know, Jay was a great owner where he created an environment where we needed everything all at once. So like the more people that knew a skill set was better. And as a business owner, you look at things different. Like as a manager, you don't want the people under you to kind of be as good as you, but as a business owner, you want everyone to be the best. And there's a lot of people out there that I've seen come in, or in my past, where they do more effort than keeping you down rather than letting you use SolidWorks or letting you understand how the programming apps work. So you did a great job of having an environment that was like that. You never get what you don't ask for. I'm very good at asking for things. I ask my customers now. I ask you. I've always kind of laid out what my goal is, because I always have a goal and what I'm trying to do, and then ask other people for help to get there. Mm-hmm. Don't operate angry. I've only seen Tom Persh angry once, and it was really probably warranted, but at the same time, if you know him, he doesn't get angry very often.
So,
and it wasn't at me.
That's, you didn't see me get angry often either, did you?
A few times, but I think they were warranted.
So the reason I bring that up is that anger can be a tool, and it shouldn't be a tool you use very often. But if you don't use it very often,
When you use it, it
when
means
you
more.
use it, it means more, and it can be quite effective, but it can't be out of control anger. And this may seem weird, but even though I was angry and exhibiting anger, I understood exactly what I was doing, and I could have turned it off at the time. So I want to
On
ask.
Tuesday meetings, you came in, you set the law down a couple of times, and it created a lot of reaction that was warranted, and we steered the ship. So it was definitely needed.
Yes, anger is a tool, and think about if you do get angry at people on your team, are you using it as a tool, or is it just a emotional response that you are not really in control of?
So another one, if it's not helping the bottom line or top line, stop. You're not doing the right work. That is another one where people fall in love with these problems and they're not really the great problems. Fail faster is really doesn't. When the first time you told me to fail faster, it kind of shocked me. And I want you to explain this one more, because this was a big one for me.
Well, this is something that comes from the startup world, probably more out of Silicon Valley. But the idea is that it doesn't have to be perfect, and let's have action rather than plan. So you want to try something. If it works, great. It's only really a failure if you either don't win or don't learn something from it. So perhaps fail fast. It should be better phrased as learn fast. But get at it and try something, move on.
And cut your losses.
Right.
You know, rather go quick or minimize your losses than hold on to a failing idea as well.
Right. And that the whole idea there is, particularly in the software world, don't try to build the perfect product for your customer without trying it. And I think, I'm trying to remember who it is out in Silicon Valley, said, if you're not embarrassed with your first release of software, then you spent too much time and you released too late.
Yeah. So in that, you really want to just place guardrails on people, coach them, and trust that they have good intentions for the things they're trying. Very important. Enjoy the journey. I think that's just amazing.
That was one of our core values.
Whether you're failing or doing good, you can have a good time doing it, which sounds weird, but if you're failing, why be miserable when you're failing? Like, you know?
Yeah.
Communication leads to alignment. Communication, again, I'll bring it back. It's just when people know what's coming and they're aware of what's going on, they understand your problems, things just magically fall in line. People do want to help you. The people closest to work have the answers. I was thrown into a lot of different areas at the end. It was like more like a crisis management.
Mm-hmm.
And you go down to sheet metal and like, oh, what's the problem? You walk out to the shop floor and the answer's right there. Oh, I can't keep the laser running because I have to put the material away. Well, that's easy. I look like a hero now in my management meeting because we fixed it. Like, these problems become so simple when you get down to who's actually doing the work. They have the answers.
Yes.
It takes teamwork to work as a group towards a common goal. You can't do this yourself. You guys can't run a company that size yourself. You had techniques that would bring alignment and everyone working towards a common goal. And that's when things just really started happening at a rapid pace, I believe. Mm-hmm. And that's all my things. But all those come down to what to change it to, and how to cause the change. And that's back to theory of constraints. Like, why do you want to change things?
So I'm going to throw a word out that, as I was thinking how to describe you from a management sense.
Wasn't
And,
always easy.
well, the word I came up with was maverick. And the way Tom Persh ended up managing you at the end, but I was always involved with the projects, and before he had the direct oversight of you, was involved in working with you directly. So what I think the maverick is the person who makes a difference, who creates the changes within the company that allow the company to go forward, comes up with the new ideas and pushes through opposition. And it's tough on management because you created a lot of chaos. You upset the apple cart. You didn't necessarily respect the line of chain of command, and it wasn't malicious. It was all to bring the company to a better place, to get through that constraint that you saw there. So in managing you, probably to be blunt, you were a pain in the ass sometimes, Steve.
I totally know it.
So I'd like to have you just talk about being a maverick and some of the things that you think I did well in managing you that enabled you to be so successful, but maybe some things that I could have done better.
I think the best thing that you did is you kind of would really at times tell us exactly what you're trying to accomplish. You communicated the challenge very well. Like, I want to do this, or these are our core problems. And then I would go after what problems you would present in any way I could.
I also think, though, that part of my job was I protected you against the people who would have shut you down.
Totally agree with that.
But at the same time, I made sure I put guardrails. You used that word before. I put guardrails in place so you didn't totally go off the reservation.
Yep. And there was times I hit them.
Yeah, and then bounced over back on the other side. But I think mavericks are, if you want to grow, it's important to identify who the mavericks are in your company and think about the relationship, you or the people who are in charge of directly managing them, how they think about that.
But you also invested a lot of time, effort, training classes. I mean, so many leadership programs I went to. I mean, I grew my skills a lot from being there.
Mm-hmm. So you have graduated, in a sense. As of a month ago, you bought a small sheet metal company. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell me about the process of buying a company, because that wasn't the first company you looked at.
No. So for the past 2.5 years, I probably looked at 50 companies. I wanted to stay in my local area. They were all sheet metal companies. And I learned a lot through the exercise. Nick Mercier, who I worked for Macy Industries, really taught me a lot. He did the books with me many a times. He gave me the kind of the financials behind it. But it's very simple. Like most companies I went up to, I was like, well, what do you think your company's worth? They don't know. They couldn't even put a number on it. And you can whip out your calculator. In about 2 minutes, I was getting to what their value was 3 months after they would come back, their accountant, and say, yeah, you were there. Like, and it's very simple math. You take, most sheet metal companies should make about 20% EBITDA. If you're not doing very well, it's 15. If you're doing really well, maybe it's 26 or 30. I haven't seen any 26 or 30s come trying to buy a shop. Mm-hmm. So most of the shops are under 5 million. And you would just take, if they do, 2 million times 0.15 and multiply by 3. So 3 times cash flow. And then you would do plus or minus a percentage from there. If they have a lot of good equipment, if they don't, if they own the building, that's different. Does the real estate come with it? Mm-hmm. But just that simple math, in about 2 minutes, I could get to a number to start the conversation. Whereas, the first 10 I looked at, I couldn't even start the conversation because it was like, oh, how much is it? Oh, I don't know. I'll get back to you. I mean, weeks would go by without an answer. So I had to learn how to kind of estimate the value for them and then get the conversation started.
And
So what you want to look for in buying a business, what I've learned for, which was on my wish list, is you want an absentee owner. You don't want an owner in the middle of everything who programs and runs and manages, because that you're buying him at that point, and he's not coming with you after you buy the deal. Like, he's going off into the sunset. There's some deals where maybe he'll work there for a year or two, but that year is going to go by very fast.
how many of the businesses you looked at had an absentee owner in retrospect?
Probably like 3. Like, they're very hard to find. They're like the unicorn.
So someone who is still an active owner but thinking of selling their business, how do they make themselves appear as an absentee owner to someone?
Honestly, like, this is like selling a house. Like, there's techniques you can do to make your business astronomically more valuable without really changing a lot. But you do have to empower other people to do the work for you and let go of some of those quotes that you might lose 2% on, because the value of you having someone else doing that and giving them an opportunity to do that when you sell the place, because you want them to still have a job, is huge, and it goes right to your pocket. But so it's easier said than done, because the personalities of someone who owns a sheet metal shop is they like sheet metal. They are a manufacturer. They're not a business person. They're not a finance person. Right. And I am a part owner, and I love it. Like, I just left from there. 5 machines are running all at once. That's like music to my ears. Like, I want to go back there and just listen to that. Like, it's amazing to me. And the energy that happens when everything's working the right way, I can see why someone doesn't want to give that up, really.
Yeah. I remember going out, and when I was a salesperson selling to job shops before I owned Rapid, being out on the floor, and I could hear a punch press pounding away, and the owner said to me, "Do you hear that, Jay?" It's like, "Yeah." He goes, "That's the sound of money."
Well, your experience is really unique. And now that I'm at the reset or the start of this, I always think back to the beginning ages, and Jay came in with sales. He could sell anything. Like, he's like, I can sell this thing. I know it. So you brought in knowing how to call customers the right way and how to set up the front end the right way. But you didn't know anything about sheet metal. Every job you would come by and go out to the shop floor and get some hours and then put the J magic on it, go sell it. And you were doing a lot of the quotes. Like, that's much different than the normal person who buys a sheet metal shop. They buy it because they think that I'm going to make a lot of money just managing the right way and cutting costs. Whereas you're bringing, I'm going to grow the crap out of this thing through sales and sell it, and then you can get better equipment. But there
still was a point for me where I had to make a conscious decision to let go of the quoting. And
yeah, you taught me how to quote. That was painful.
It was.
Because I could never do it right. I mean, honestly, because it was your baby. There's not. I could get to the same number as you, but it wouldn't matter. I didn't get it to the way that you got it.
But at a certain point, though, I gave it up. I didn't give it up entirely, but
you let go gradually.
I let go gradually, and I said, I'd rather not see how the sausage is made. I'm just going to turn my head, and as long as the customers are ordering at prices that we're making money on, then got to let Steve and the other folks.
For years, we didn't have these magic metrics. You would just look at the end of the month and go, we made money. You didn't know on what job we made money on or any of that stuff.
Right. So now that how did you come up with the name Approved Sheet Metal?
If you know me, you just know that. I say approved like 40 million times a day. I just love it. And it's a positive word, and you want to be on the approved list. And will you approve this quote? It just fits, and it's good for marketing. I love it. I love everything about it.
Okay. So you came in, and in the first month, what have you done? How have you changed the business?
So I didn't change it that much yet. Through being at Rapid, I saw a lot of new people come in, these experts, these professionals. Some people even relocated to come work at Rapid. Like, that blew my mind. I could never do that. Mm-hmm. But they would come in, and on day 2, they would put in all their things that worked in a production shop, and it would just frustrate people for months. And that hurt their credibility for like 6 or 8 months. Some people it took for them to regain that.
Mhm.
So I definitely didn't want to do that to my crew. We bought a business that was making money. So more status quo. I went in there, I learned how to do the whole front end. Setting up QuickBooks took a long time. I know how to do the financials now. I can program a part from the beginning to the end, learning all the equipment, making upgrades on things that I want. But I'm just going back to what's my constraint? What's the weakest link in all of this? And right now, everything's set up. So now I'm just building up my customer list and getting in new jobs. Our shop is very strong. Like, we have a shop that was built years ago. Like, it's been in that building for 30 years. And the layout they did is like so much better than the other shops I've been in. Like, it has nice flow. Like, remember when we were going to do all those spaghetti maps? Like, our shop is a mess compared to this. Like, the work just travels like it's supposed to all the way down the lines. People have procedures in place. It's just really awesome.
So you said you haven't changed a lot.
Nope.
What, if anything, did you tell yourself, I'm deliberately not going to change in the first 30, 60, 90 days?
So I made sure I didn't change one thing or scare everyone for the past 2 weeks. And that's not easy to do because I have a ton of ideas and I like to move really fast.
Right.
But I gained a lot of respect by doing that. We actually went and looked at everyone's skill set, and we had to let go a couple people that were overpaid, but the people that were underpaid, we rewarded. Not everyone got a raise, but it was done more on what they can do versus who they knew.
Why did you do that in the first month?
Because it was so unfair, I think. And it wasn't like...
So it was that obvious?
Yeah.
And do you think everyone in the company sort of knew that?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, when you fire someone, they're like, oh my God, we were waiting for that to happen. That's pretty much what happened. Like,
Okay.
and I guess we did change something. We took management out. You don't keep management in a company, you know, that's not doing that well.
What are some of the low-hanging fruits that you see available to you that maybe in the first 6 or 12 months, things that you can execute on that you know will pay dividends, but aren't quite right to implement yet?
So their technology and the way that they laser and punch things was okay, but I've really already stepped it up. We're starting to do more punch the lasers, which I love. Like, we all cheered when we first did that because, I mean, when you can open that capabilities up to punch all the holes and then go laser the outside, we're shaving like minutes off these old programs, and the quality is great because you're getting crisp outlines without nibbling.
Yeah, you take out a lot of deburring. The
coolest thing I've already done is I've quoted off a 2,000 part quote, and I have it formed up in the punch press and dropping out of the chute complete. Like, it was awesome. So, I mean, this thing just runs, comes out. Yes, we have to debur it a little bit. If we had that tumbler, it would be amazing. But it's like such a light touch versus in the press brake, every single hit.
Right.
And most shops have turrets and all this technology. I don't know if they don't use it or not, but we didn't use that much stuff at Rapid. I think we could have by just knowing the capabilities of it. And the guys at Wilson Tool are amazing. Like,
well, I think when you're making the same part over and over again and in the higher quantities, you can take time to evaluate the process and put in fixed tooling that will save you a bunch of time, but it takes more upfront cost, more programming.
But I'm able to go through most of their long running jobs. We're changing the hover heights. We're tuning in jobs that they've run for years and shaving minutes off them. It's just so satisfying to be able to do that.
So what though, as from a software perspective, just from your background, what do you see again? That's 6 to 12 months, just low hanging fruit, things that you are just waiting to jump on, but you know they're not quite ready for it yet.
So the first things I'll probably do is something where we're not measuring the employees, but acknowledging how much work they've done, how many jobs they completed, estimated hours completed, and just making sure that they're aware that I'm watching how much they produce. And if they produce a lot, I'm more grateful.
So metrics sounds like. Okay. how are you thinking about culture? What are you doing to have the approved sheet metal? Well, besides the name, that's, I guess, a big start.
Yeah.
How is it becoming Steve's company and reflecting you and your values?
So through the communication, through, just seeing people every morning, it's become a really tight group. Everyone has a say of what they want to do, communicate. If they have suggestions, we put these t-shirts out. Everyone loves the t-shirts. The whole crew loves the name, the logo. We put up flags in the shop floor. I mean, we clean the shop floor. I mean, the shops never look cleaner as well. Taking time to clean is very powerful because people don't want to do it, but afterwards they keep it up and they like it, and it's more enjoyable to come in and work. We painted shop lines on the floor. Like, everyone was blown away by just like the differences that this stuff makes. And you come to work every day in this atmosphere, like you want it to be organized. And
so again, you've only it's been a month.
I know, yeah, it's been a lot.
No, but this is important. So if there's a shop out there that is not as clean as it could be, obviously you're still making parts, shipping parts in this month. Cleaning wasn't a full-time activity,
Right.
but it sounds like you are dramatically better. It can be done. It should be done.
Yep.
And
lighting's the next big expense that we're going to pocket out and do as well, because it's very important.
So how is the lighting not adequate now?
Currently, there's missing fixtures and bad light bulbs. We're actually going to put in LED lighting and just really make it pop. And that's what it should be, a nice clean floor with bright lights, especially when you're working with sheet metal to measure everything. And
so these are really basic things.
Yeah.
And they don't cost a lot of money.
No, they really don't.
How about, well, before you started having these meetings, did they tell you how often they would have meetings or when the last time they had a meeting was?
So the biggest complaint was they would fall upon deaf ears. They say that we've told them that, like, half the things that they've said to me once, like, well, we've been telling them for years, like, great, tell me once, let's get on it, and really just listening and, listening and letting them tell me what things we should work on first.
This is really important. You are better off not asking something if you're not going to act on it.
Oh my God, yes. And don't implement something that you do for like a week and then stop. Like, I'm very cognizant about what I'm agreeing to and what I'm implementing, because through my career, I've had a lot of ideas. And if you try and do some of these and then fizzle out, like, that hurts everything for a long time.
Yeah, your credibility gets
Yes.
shot, for sure. And one of the things that you've done is on the front end for quoting and estimating, you've brought on paperless parts.
Yep.
Why use a off-the-shelf tool like paperless parts for quoting and estimating rather than just building something yourself? Because you certainly have the skill set.
It's just, that's not my major constraint right now. So it's not the weakest link. I'd rather put my attention towards the weakest link.
And how are you implementing paperless parts for quoting and estimating?
So implementation is really easy. It didn't take very long and just works.
And what are you seeing that makes it more efficient or easier for your team to use?
For us, we could quote off a spreadsheet, but you don't kind of get that beautiful quote that goes out. And I think it's all like, just like you always taught me, a book cover on your shop. It makes your shop look very nice. You're just a presentation of it in the format.
Yeah.
And half the buyers don't see your shop. They don't come in for a visit. What they see is your paperwork and your quotes, and that's what they're judging. What the inside of your shop is.
That's a great point. And your website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My website's cool.
Yes, you got a good website.
Matt Sardillo.
All right. Well, what else you got?
Everything.
Everything.
No, mentors. You've been a huge mentor of mine, Tom Persh, and Nick Mercier as well. He's taught me a lot in a very short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been in precision sheet metal. I went up to miscellaneous metals. Like, do you even know what miscellaneous metals is?
No.
It's fascinating. Like, these guys build hot rods and stuff when they go home. Like, you don't need CAD up there. Like you can hand sketch something and they just know how to unfold and go to the corner shear and make stuff, scribe lines. And it's just true fabrication on like steroids. Like
Right.
we made so many things so fast that they would be halfway done the project before I could probably get the 3D CAD model done, just through conversation. And what they do is they're complete problem solvers. Like someone wanted a pneumatic table that would rise up and down and, do a lift and hold a certain amount of pounds. And these guys just can pull this out of nowhere and within 2 weeks deliver it, not just design it. They use pneumatics, and it was a really fun time for me.
Yeah, and I remember when you built your motorcycle from scratch.
Yep.
So that's always be bugging you to put a helmet on, which you never would, but.
And my big truck and my Jeep.
Right.
Lots of toys. No, I do like building things. Other advice out there is the Colby scores. They're amazing. It really makes you think that not everyone thinks like you. And when you understand that, you can relate to people better. You can communicate your problem better and your needs better, your goals better, because not everyone in the world looks at the same thing as you do. So one of the things working with software developers that I always did is I get done talking, I'm like, okay, repeat that back. And I would get something totally different back than what I was trying to say. And then I could correct how they interpreted back.
Was that a standard thing that you did?
I still do it today, like almost everywhere, but especially working with software developers, when you're done explaining something, just go, take the 5 minutes and go, hey, repeat that back to me. How did you interpret what I said? And it's always wrong with software developers. And I'm telling you, it's crazy. I don't know if they overcomplicate things or what, but I think this is a major thing wrong
it sounds
with
like it would
developers.
work with anyone.
It does.
Huh, that's a great idea.
It takes a little bit of time, but it's all about, like, even when you're in an interview, you're supposed to be listening more than talking, and just shut up for a minute and listen.
Anything else, Steve?
No, I could go on for hours, I bet.
All
This
right.
is really fun, though.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a part 2.
Oh, boy.
All right. Well, you've heard from the maestro himself. Thank you, Steve, for stopping in and chatting with us. Maybe we will do a part 2 in a year or so and find out how approved sheet metal has changed, what's happened in the year since you've owned it. But I always love to connect with you and chat about some of the really fun times we had at Rapid. And I hope for the audience, there's some tidbits, some takeaways that you'll be able to implement in your own businesses. Where can people reach you in Approved Sheet Metal?
So my email is steve@approvedsheetmetal.com. And we have a great website, approvedsheetmetal.com, or on LinkedIn as well. I like LinkedIn a lot.
You like LinkedIn. So do we get to hear the air horn before we go here?
So not only the air horn, but I had the General Lee on my phone. And every day when I was in the machine shop, because I was working with a bunch of teenagers back then. And the other thing that I always did, I would actually sit in the cubicles with these guys. Like, I was always very close to the work because those are the guys that do have it.
Yeah. Do it up against the mic.
But it just makes it fun, and definitely use that a lot at Rapid.
Well, listeners, I leave you with a challenge. How will you give the Maverick in your company more freedom? Or if you don't have a Maverick, ask yourself, why not? Did you chase them away? Always good to self-reflect. Thank you for tuning in, and we really appreciate you taking the time to make us a part of your day. Please keep those comments coming, and please leave us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And until next time, keep those spindles turning, those lasers cutting, and those air horns sounding. Thanks, Steve.